About how highly intelligent people think. Most of us have a mental image. The quiet genius in the corner. The person with all the answers. The one who seems 2 steps ahead in every conversation. But modern psychology tells a more complicated and, honestly, more fascinating story. High IQ isn't just a number on a test. It's a particular way the brain is wired to receive, organize, and respond to the world. And that wiring tends to produce some deeply interesting psychological patterns. Patterns that researchers have spent decades studying. So let's talk about what psychology actually reveals about the inner world of people with very high IQs. The first thing to understand is their relationship with boredom. High IQ individuals tend to experience boredom more intensely than most. This isn't laziness. Psychologists link it to a need for cognitive stimulation. When the brain is capable of processing complex information rapidly, routine tasks can feel almost painful. Many researchers now believe that low tolerance for boredom in gifted individuals is actually a sign of an overactive neural system, constantly seeking engagement. The second pattern is emotional intensity. Contrary to the stereotype of the cold, logical thinker, many highly intelligent people feel emotions very deeply. Psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski described this as overexcitability, a heightened sensitivity to stimuli, both intellectual and emotional. A piece of music, an ethical dilemma, or even a conversation can trigger surprisingly deep emotional responses in high IQ individuals. Third is their complicated relationship with perfectionism. The same brain that notices patterns quickly also notices flaws, errors, and gaps. This makes many intelligent people their own harshest critics. They hold their thinking to a very high standard, which can sometimes delay action. In psychology, this is connected to what's called metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. It's powerful, but it comes with weight. Fourth, they tend to feel profoundly misunderstood. When your mind processes the world differently, communication can feel like translation. High IQ individuals often report struggling to connect with others, not because they lack empathy, but because their frame of reference feels different. Research on gifted adults consistently identifies social isolation not as preference, but as a byproduct of cognitive difference. Fifth is existential sensitivity. People with high IQs tend to confront big questions earlier and more frequently. Questions about mortality, meaning, identity, and the nature of consciousness aren't occasional thoughts. They're recurring visitors. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as existential depression, a kind of sadness that comes not from circumstance, but from awareness. Now, pause here for a moment. Notice how many of these patterns look like problems from the outside. Oversensitivity, indecision, social difficulty, existential worry. But psychology asks us to look more carefully, because context changes everything. Sixth, they tend to process failure differently. Rather than internalizing failure as identity, many high IQ individuals treat it as data. This is linked to what psychologist Carol Dweck called the growth mindset. Though for genuinely intelligent people, it often goes even deeper. Failure becomes a map, not a verdict. Seventh, they are often drawn to complexity in relationships. Shallow connection tends to feel unsatisfying. High IQ individuals often seek partners and friendships that challenge them, surprise them, and grow with them. Stability alone rarely feels like enough, and perhaps most telling of all, they are rarely at peace with what they already know. The more intelligent a person is, the more aware they become of everything they haven't yet figured out. Knowledge, for them, doesn't create certainty. It creates more questions. And maybe that's the real psychology of high IQ. Not the answers a person holds, but the questions they can't stop asking. A mind that refuses to settle A brain quietly convinced that the world is always more interesting than it first appears. Subscribe. What do we actually know about how highly